In this video, we will create the private endpoint for Webapp and access Webapp in the private network. Before doing that, let's understand the architecture that we're targeting to implement. We got one virtual network with two subnet in it. One subnet is to host the VM for testing the Webapp locally, right, in the private network. And the second subnet is for hosting the private endpoint for the Webapp, right? We'll create one Webapp. First, we will ensure that we're not allocating the private endpoint, but later we will update that and add the private endpoint to the Webapp so that we can access that Webapp only locally within the cloud network. All right, so let's get on the portal. So what I did here, I just created one virtual network as mentioned in the architecture, and there are two subnet, test subnet and the private endpoint subnet. And what I did, I also created one VM so that we can test the Webapp locally. Okay, let's go ahead and create the Webapp first. Okay, so Webapp is part of the app services. Let's select the app services and create a Webapp. All right, and we select the resource group, in this case RG Webapp. Let's name this my web app and just some unique number so that we get that name available. All right, we can select the runtime stack as .NET 6 and we can place Webapp anywhere. Let's go ahead and put in the Australia East. We create the plan and we call this one my Webapp 7, something like that plan, and create that. We go to the deployment. We don't do anything here. We go to the networking and we got a public access enabled, but that is what we want initially. We go ahead and review and create the Webapp. All right, it should not take much time. It should be very fast. So let's wait for this Webapp to finish. Right, Webapp is deployed. Let's go to the resource, and on this resource we can just click on the default domain name, and that will open up the Webapp on the open internet. By default we get a public endpoint anyway for the Webapp, and you see that when I click that endpoint, we got a response saying that Webapp is up and running, right? That means this particular link, when we click, is basically accessing the Webapp over the open internet, right? And that is something we don't want. So what is the thing that we're gonna do? We are going to add a private endpoint now. So we should see the section called networking. In this case, this is the one. All right, and here you can see that public network access is enabled. First we going to disable this, right? Let's say, and by clicking this you agree, update access restriction. So this particular thing should not let us access. Update is complete. What we do, again we go to the app service, click on the app service, and let's make sure that we click on the endpoint once again, and there you go, we got a error message saying that we can't access the Webapp. Right, now what is the thing that we should do here? We again go to the networking, and this is where we can add a private endpoint. Let's go ahead and add a express private endpoint, Webapp private endpoint. That we're gonna name. Select the virtual network, in this case select the subnet where we want to put, and integrate with private DNS zone. That is what we should do, and click OK. So this process is basically adding the private endpoint on the Webapp, and let's wait for this operation to finish. All right, private endpoint is added. We again go back to the app services, click on the app service, make sure that we visit the endpoint once again, and we still got the same message that we can't access. So we take this one, and now what is that we're gonna do? we go to the VM. This is the VM that we have already deployed. That's the test VM. Test VM, because it is there in the same network, we should be in a position to access the web app. All right, so it says that our web app is up and running. That is how you can see the impact of private endpoint. That means you can restrict the access to the PaaS services using the private endpoint within the network, right? Now, few things there. We go back here, and what are the other things that we see? Private DNS zone, right? So when we did something, and when we selected that we would like to integrate with the private link DNS zone, this is what Azure created automatically. And Azure, added the record as well in this particular DNS zone for that particular web app. And you can see that particular record here, right? That record is added and might have created the VNet link as well. That is what you can see with that particular virtual network, right? These are the very important things, to do if you want to integrate your private endpoint with private DNS zones, which are something, suggested by the Azure for the Microsoft services wherever they support the private endpoint, right? And we already discussed in the previous section how to do this. So that is very essential to understand when you work with a private endpoint and the private DNS zones. All right, that's all pretty much in this video.